Deity Agus Falcha. Hi, hello, and welcome. It's John O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School, and today I'm going to be talking about something I do get asked on occasion when it comes to working with the Dagda and his absence, in that he's not always present. For an ever-present deity, sometimes he's not exactly present. And so I'd like to just take a few minutes to talk about that, and then how we interact with deity in many different ways in our spiritual life. So yeah, if you're interested, stick around for it. And again, thank you very much for being part of this community here, for all the amazing comments and the interaction that we're getting. It's really, really fantastic, really enjoying it. So the likes and subscribes are really great for the algorithm. We're actually seeing a couple of new people popping up into the thread saying, oh wow, I never kind of saw this before. And we're okay, between you and me, I'm not exactly doing this for fun. It is fun, I enjoy it, but the real reason we're doing this, no surprise, is to try and get the right information in front of as many people as possible. Cards on the table. It's very obvious that that's what this is. So many more people are connecting through the medium of YouTube and learning stuff. I do it myself all the time. I'm like, hey, how do I fix this piece of machinery that I'm working on? Or, I need to do some kind of work on my painting or something like that. Oh, I'll just pop in, I'll check, see if there's a YouTube video or whatever. Or I'm stuck in a particular game. Is there a walkthrough? Because yes, I'm a big nerd that way too. So yeah, we are actually seeing more people kind of turn up, which is great. People going, oh, I never kind of came across this. And Laura's werewolf video yesterday was a really great one, because it is such a very common kind of supernatural theme that exists in so much media out there. But the fact that we have such fantastic, well, a pocket full of werewolves really here in Irish lore, from the werewolves of Austria and everything else, which I think is a fascinating story. A bishop cursed some people and turned them into werewolves. Yeah, cheers, thanks. But yeah, we're really, really grateful that so many of you are doing the like and subscribe and sharing the kind of videos with other people, because it is our drive and our goal as the Irish Pagan School to get as much real information out there as possible, to elevate the native voices, the native experiences of our people and our culture, so that they are getting in front of the ears that need to hear them, or the eyes that need to see them. Anyway, where was I? Yes, so I was going to talk about the ever-present and sometimes absent Dagda. If anyone doesn't know, the kind of writing name I go under is Scaly Bug, which is little storyteller. And the stories I write are on behalf of the deity I work for, which is on Dagda More. This story goes quite a way back, actually, where I was starting to do my own spiritual exploration, and I've always been writing stories. Ever since I was a kid, I was writing stories. Even on Jack is my dad, sorry. He was a communications officer in the Irish Army and did service in the UN. So I have a military history, which I'm very proud of through him. But he was, he always had typewriting skills, and there was one thing he promoted with us as kids. So it was a big, huge, heavy metal electric typewriter that when you turned it on, the big switch on the side, it would hum into life, and the keystrokes on it were like thunder almost. Like, thinking about it now, as you like type on a touch typing laptop, or like even like a smartphone where there's no sound whatsoever, typing on an electric typewriter was like hammering the words into being on paper. So I absolutely loved it as a kid, and I would 100% play with it all the time, writing stories, rewriting stories. And so when it came to my way of trying to figure out my own spiritual path and my own spiritual kind of progression, I went to the thing I was most comfortable with, which was stories. And so I went and I read as many stories as I could about the Dagda, and then I began to need to process in my own way some of my own thoughts and experiences around that. And that's where I began to write my stories about the Dagda. And many people have read my stories and read the books I've written. Tales of a Dagda Bard, volumes 1 and 2. Volume 3 has been edited, but is held up with John. I'm holding it back myself when I really shouldn't be. But I write the stories that I really feel I need to tell, and they have really helped me processing my own sense of mental health, my own emotional well-being, but then also my relationship with this deity. And I was at a conference a couple of years ago, and one of the guys there, Scott, actually asked me a question. And he too was a dietic guy, had been a dietic guy for many years. He's one of the few that I know of in the world, which I'm delighted to have met Scott. I really, really am. But Scott was like, can I ask you a question? And it's a bit of a weird one. Sometimes I don't feel the Dagda around. And I was like, yeah, the same, absolutely the same. And he was a little bit concerned about that. He's like, did I do something wrong? Like, is it something that, like, and I was like, no, he's just busy. Sometimes he goes where the work is needed, and where he won't be where the work isn't needed. Now, that doesn't mean he is an absent deity, he is an uncaring deity in some way. He does absolutely care. My experience, sorry, I'm speaking for him when I should be speaking for me and my perspective and my opinion, because that's a big, big part of all of this. And when I talk like that, I'm talking about my perspective. I'm sharing my perspective. Some people have their perspectives that align with my perspectives, but that doesn't mean other perspectives are invalid. That's a big thing as well, so it's important to be clear where we're talking about the lore, where I will turn around and say, in the stories, we have very clearly during, say, the last video I wrote, or the last video I recorded, the second part to the Fear Bullock story, it's recorded in the lore that Dagda took the left field on that day when Nuada lost his arm. He was not beside Nuada. It was actually very squarely written that he was off on the left field. And on that day, he charged personally, broke the line, fit for 100 warriors to follow after him. That was his conflict against the Fear Bullock. It does say in the lore that he, when he heard about Nuada going down, Nuada kind of being struck down by Shreng, he just moved. He absolutely just broke across the entire battlefield. And it said that he himself stood over Nuada, preventing the killing stroke from landing until Nuada could be carried away. So that's what the lore says. That's what the actual story of it says. So when I talk about that, I'm talking about the information that we have. When I then step across, I want to be very clear in saying, listen, here's my personal experience with him. Here's my relationship with the Dagda as someone who works for him, and has chosen, as someone who has chosen to work for him on the daily. So much so that I made a cup of coffee for me this morning, and I made a cup of coffee for him, and it's on the altar. Now, whether or not I feel the Dagda in my daily process doesn't mean I don't still turn up and do the daily process. Other times the Dagda is very present. I have felt like, the physical reassurance of his hands upon my shoulder. I have felt, him kind of guiding me when I get stuck, when like the words kind of get stuck inside me and I'm not really sure what to say, and I'm choking off my own ability to speak by my own self-consciousness. I have felt him kind of just give me a nudge and allow me to kind of step my own ego aside, and allow the words to flow. But sometimes he's not around. He's just not there. And that's okay. That is a healthy part of any spiritual relationship, because if you've got my other videos on spiritual sensitivity and spiritual sensibility, it is about this concept of right relationship. It's about this core equivalence, this kind of establishing a bond between you and your spiritual guardians, even your guardians, even your ancestors. It's about building those kind of connections, but we don't live in each other's pockets all of the time. In the same way that I love all of my siblings, I don't talk to them every single day. I absolutely love my parents. I'm delighted to be their son. I'm very proud to be the son of Jack and Carmel, but I don't talk to them every day. So the relationship is such that it doesn't need constant supervision. And I think that's where things can sometimes become tricky for people, because whenever we start in a new relationship, there is a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of kind of communication, a lot of back and forward, a lot of establishing of boundaries and, respect and personal sovereignty, and then figuring out how the communication works and kind of where the touch points are, what's being expected, what's being asked of. And there is so much in the beginning of a relationship that it can be very intense, and it can be very powerful in that building of that connection. But over time, the relationship no longer needs as much work to be maintained. Now, again, it's not that the relationship is devalued by a lack of work. It's not that we don't feel the same connection or the same bond. It's just that having built up all of the groundwork, having built the bridges between my own spiritual self and my belief and my connection with the Dagda, I don't need to build a new bridge every time I want to communicate with him. I just need to choose to cross that bridge or meet him on that bridge to kind of have that connection. And sometimes I'll go to the bridge, but he might not be on the other side of the bridge because he has other stuff to do. Now, the whole concept of immortality, that's easy to get. It's this kind of not being mortal, being absent of death, being able to kind of carry on through time. Omniscience is the ability to know everything. In that, like, you just have complete and absolute knowledge of everything everywhere. Now, I have found Dagda to be very well informed, but there are things that he doesn't know. So again, my perspective, very clear here. And so, like, he is very, I don't know, does he fit the same conforms of omniscience or not? We don't know for sure, but we do know from the lore, again, going back to what I reference my spirituality based on, there are parts in the stories where he did not know where the Fomorians want to land, and he went to the Morrigan to get that information. So as much as he can rain fire from the skies, move mountains, hide entire rivers and lakes, there's still stuff he doesn't know. And so the presence, the omnipresence, omnipresence means that they're just always there. And so the belief in the Christian God is that he is omnipresent, in that he is all-knowing, all-present, always there. He has the kind of the Santa Claus thing. He watches you when you're awake. He knows when you're asleep. Naughty and nice. Sorry. But there is that kind of belief of omnipresence. And though some people have been raised with that, and that is the experience, and that's okay too, the Dagda is not that. He tends to go where the work is needed most. And so sometimes, if I specifically need him, of course I know I can reach out to him. I've built that bond, I've built that connection. I know he'll be there if I call for him, but I don't need to have him around me every day. I've grown and up enough to be able to do stuff on my own. And I think that's where, a good, healthy balance of relationship should be expected to get to, if that makes sense. It's not a case that I need to ask Dagda to do everything for me, or that I need Dagda to hold my hand when I'm going through everything. But if I'm having a bad day, if I have a migraine splitting my head because there's a storm ripping through Ireland, I will call out to him and I'll be like, "Tur the law of Armakian, put your hand on my head." And Taramach on pain let the hull, which is like, take out the pain, please. And I did that. Literally, we've had 3 storms in the last week or more lashed through Ireland, and one of them was very big, and that kind of set off a pressure migraine in me, and I was written off for an entire day. And in the quiet dark, when it was just me in the bedroom and I couldn't deal with the pain anymore, I called out to him and he helped. I again felt his hand upon my head because I asked him for it. And so there is this kind of, I've come across it a couple of times. And as I said, we do a spiritual consultation offering within the school. It is possible to kind of get a direct response from me if you need one. It is an opportunity there in case anyone needs it. And there is times where people have availed of it. And I'm very, very grateful, very humbled to be able to provide that for people. But in some cases, it is a matter of clarifying that the relationship, A, takes time to build up, B, takes consistent effort to maintain, and C, does get to a point where it doesn't need to be hard work all the time. And so I think that's really what I wanted to talk about with this kind of brief chat there today. The Dagda is not going to be omnipresent. Sometimes he will be off taking care of other business in other locations, and that's healthy. That's sometimes what's needed. But it's important for us to be able to get to the point where we are stable and reassured. We've grown enough in our own kind of spirituality and our own kind of spiritual landscape that we're very confident and comfortable in ourselves, that we don't need the external validation of deity to an excessive degree, if that makes sense. So I feel like I'm stepping across onto ranty mode. I always like to talk from a positive point of view to kind of give a perspective of, myself and my experiences, but then also to say how, there are ways to kind of go forward. And then the shoe isn't going to fit everybody. Everyone's kind of experience is going to be unique. Everyone expect like connection is going to be unique to them, but there are always going to be some fundamental truths that will help, which is, the skills around spiritual sensitivity and sensibility I've mentioned, but then also going back to the lore, going back to the documented evidence. And that's one thing I've seen sometimes. People ask me, is it the Dagda that's communicating with me? I don't know for sure. And I often ask, did you ask him? Did you actually make the space, open yourself up within a spiritual, safe, secure environment? Always, again, don't look after yourself first. I talked about it in sensibility, the healthy ego, being able to establish your own sense of self. But, getting to the point where you're feeling that communication, that connection, you should always ask, hi, yeah, are you, or what name is upon you? Which is actually in the Irish lore, that's a pretty big deal. That's actually a pretty big fucking deal. And we see it time and again in the stories where someone is asked their name, what name is there upon you? And in some of the tales, you have to ask them 3 times to make sure that you're getting the full kind of name out of them, which reminds me, I need to do a video on the Dagda's names, because he has a fuck ton of names, which is actually a lovely story about consent, which I will definitely come back and tell you that one. But, ask what name is upon you, and then be open and willing to experience the response. And then as you begin to get a name, do the reading, figure it out. And it's a matter of saying, we know that Dagda was king in Ireland for 80 years. We know he was a chieftain. We know that he's a father, and we know that he had foster kids. We know that he had the power over land, sea, sky. We know that he had power over sun and moon. We know all of this kind of stuff. So if you get information that is contrary to what is the known experience, then the question really needs to be placed to is this actually the Dagda you're dealing with? And that's where, again, going to what name is upon you multiple times can help nail that actually down. What I'll find that is, personally, in my experience, again, what I find is that Dagda is very upfront about who he is and what he can do for you. As I said, I know many people who work with various different gods and goddesses of the Irish pantheon, and they're like, oh yeah, no, I specifically work with Lou or with Oma or Bridget, but somehow Dagda just keeps turning up. I turn around and suddenly there's another god kind of rocking around the place, offering to give me a hand out, and do I accept the help of the Dagda? And a lot of cases I'm like, yeah, just he is the god who will kind of give you a hand out. He is the god who is good at everything. And so why not kind of get him on board to give you a dig out if you need it? Because again, if he's turning up, it probably means that, you are where the work is right now. So hopefully that's been a bit of an insight. Hopefully that's a bit of a banter, really. I know I've been doing some very heavy mythology kind of conversations in the last ones, but I did want to loop back to some of that kind of active spirituality and to address some of the questions that we do get. So again, from me here in the Irish Pagan School, Gurav Mahagas, thank you very much. Remember to look after yourself and take care of yourself, because there is only you and there only ever will be you. And, you're loved and you're worthy of love. So look after yourself. Until next time, take care and goodbye. Slán.